Hello there, welcome back. My name is Jakob Anker Nielsen, and I'm back with another episode in the vlog series where I dive into the headlines of the Certified Technical Architect program that is offered by ServiceNow. We are currently on week 7. I'll be discussing user experience strategies, which is the topic of this week. One thing that will be slightly different this week here, is that I will also be showing something visually, some diagrams on the slideshow. I received feedback that it would be nice to see something besides me talking in nicer words, of course. And I do appreciate this feedback. The reason I've been apprehensive in pulling too many visuals in is that essentially it does require me to invent something besides what is already in the CTA, as I cannot merely just screen share whatever we're doing in the CTA for obvious IP constraint reasons. So I need to be mindful that I'm sharing something with you that is novel to the CTA while also being relevant to it. However, in this week, I have found something that I find valuable for you to see for the user experience strategy. It is from this book called Value Proposition Design by Strategizer. It is quite the graphical book. You see, it is actually quite nice, visually pleasing, speaking of user experiences. And here we have the exact model from this book that I will be showing you. So again, it's not from the CTA framework and the content. However, it is highly relevant in my opinion. It's about understanding the customer profiles and mapping it to the different offerings and products that we'll be implementing. So why is this especially relevant? What I tend to see in ServiceNow implementations is a focus on wanting to get stuff done as soon as possible because everyone is on a time and budget constraint. Makes sense. But what happens then is that we go into these design workshops. We take the the classical approach of understanding the as-is process and organization. We understand how it will look like inside of ServiceNow out of the box. And then we try to merge this world by mapping any critical gaps that we may have between these two worlds as user stories, which will then be used as a foundation for developments to make sure we have a smooth adoption implementation of ServiceNow. While this is a good practice, it could be a better practice because what at least I often see is that the user stories in question, they have the format as a persona. I want to do X to achieve Y. And these personas are then invented as a part of the design workshop. Here, the identified needs by the representatives in the workshop is then driving the invention of personas. And in fact, it should be the other way around. What we want to be able to do is have some really nice persona classes that we are going to build out for all of the different types of users that will be interacting with ServiceNow. And we will then be making sure that we understand the dimensions of these personas that will then consist of the classes that make sure that we empathically can include them in the design as we go along. So we want to understand. Let me share my screen for this here. And here we have the presentation, sorry, the diagram that I showed you from Strategizer and the Value Proposition Design book previously. We want to understand what are the jobs to be done, what are they currently doing in the day-to-day life when, for example, zooming in on a fulfiller. We want to understand the different pains associated with this, as well as the wishes for future enhancements or what a happy path or scenario may look like, so we can take this into account when designing ServiceNow. Once we understand this, we are better equipped to actually design a value-based and user-centric user interface and user journeys with ServiceNow, as we are able to associate the specific persona pains and gains with pain alleviators and gain creators, as well as products and services inside ServiceNow that may be especially relevant or would be able to provide some of these gain and pain alleviators and creators. An example of this could, for example, it could be Service Operations Workspace as a product that might address many of the pains and gains related to the user experience of the fulfiller persona here. So to understand the different dimensions of the persona, what we can also do is to employ some different methods. We can do qualitative research. That will be sitting down, discussing with the persona group representatives, also observing potentially how they go about their daily lives when it comes to work, of course, as there is a difference between what we understand about our work and what is actually happening in our work when it comes to, for example, discovering pain points and so on, as we all have this blind spot that we just employ workarounds to mitigate some of the pains in our daily work, and they become somewhat efficient. However, it would be even more efficient and valuable for the entire organization if we could address these blind spots and pain points in a future design. On the quantitative side of things, we have elements like doing surveys to verify some of the identified pain points and gain points as well for the persona groups, so we can have them validated in a broader group setting. And from this, use it to prioritize our efforts. What should we be focusing most on when we go into the design phase? Another quantitative method would be to understand the actual usage of current systems. What are the user journeys? What do they look like in terms of data points when we look at behavioral analytics, favorite tabs, clicks, and so on? Anything we can glean from here can give us an actual representation of the jobs to be done, and also the user journeys they currently have, and any gaps in this journey as well that we might be able to address. This can then be, when we get to more of the delivery phase, be addressed through prototyping, where it is important in the ideation phase to provide as many solutions as fast as possible and to involve the user as early as possible in order for us to fail fast with all of the different user journeys and user interfaces that may not be suitable for us. While we, on the quantitative side of things, get the behavioral trends, and the qualitative research, we get an empathic understanding that is more intimate than on the quantitative side of things. And ultimately, it will give us this persona baseline where we understand, and we do have these goggles that we can put on to correctly represent the user or persona group when designing the system. And this I would like to show through, let's say this is a mapped out fulfiller persona. Once we understand what this fulfiller would like to do, what it needs to do, and what pains are associated with what they're currently doing, we can start to map as is user journeys and to be user journeys. These will then showcase the gaps in between, and instead of now just attaching a user story at random to the incident process, we are trying to map it to the journeys that may involve incident management, but also go beyond this, if that is the end-to-end journey. We want to break down the process silos as well here. Side note, that is what Service Operations Workspace and the other workspaces, for example, are designed to do, exactly this. So your design effort should also mirror this to make sure that you do not see the different persona user journeys as siloed processes, but something that intermingles and intertwines from A to Z, from request to incident to knowledge to change into customer service or the other way around and so on. Whatever is the actual behavioral patterns for the way that your services, your organization is being delivered. So now we have something actual, something a bit more tangible and understandable to tie our user stories to. And we understand and we ensure that we have covered the entire scope of personas that will be a part of this implementation as well, and not just whoever is represented in a given workshop and is able to yell the loudest. Which finally then enables us to provide the best types of services and products that address all of the persona needs. So I hope that this here has been valuable to you. Stop sharing there. Again, it's not direct content from the CTA. However, it's something that I can vouch for and I find extremely relevant to all ServiceNow implementations. Other content or stuff that we discussed this week would be content strategy and structure as well. So it's important to know how you structure your content and your user interfaces to make sure that it fits with your organizational direction, for example. An example of this could be that you want to nudge your end users to self-serve as much as possible, and you know they read from left to right, and as such you put in knowledge as the first icon on your portal, then into request, and then into, I don't know if you can find something else, but at the very end at least, the get help, where you can then create an incident, for example, if you would need to do so. However, we would want to hide that as much as possible as the last logical option when we look at the chronology of the UI design, to ensure that we are offering all of the from full deflection to semi-automation before going into the manual labor type of work. What also needs to be considered is to have a naming convention and semantics that fit into the organization that ServiceNow is being implemented into. So it needs to be a natural transition from the daily work and the language being used and going into ServiceNow. So, and not to overcomplicate it as well, to not use academia for the sake of academia, but to use actual real life words that everyone will be able to understand to make the experience of interacting with ServiceNow and the organization services herein as smooth and accessible, especially, all as possible. Last point, accessibility. I could go on about that. Of course, you need to make sure that your personas also have a wide array of representation when it comes to capability levels. I don't know if that's the right word, but at least you make sure that you cater to those who are colorblind, those who need alternate text because they are hard, don't see as well, and hard of hearing if there's anything audio and so on, that you make sure that our workarounds for these people as well, to make sure that you make a comprehensive end-to-end design that is user-centric and accessible to all. That is all I want to cover this week. I hope you did find some value in this. Let me know if there's anything you would like to see more or less of. And as you have seen from today, I will try to incorporate it to the best of my ability. Thank you very much. I will see you next week. Bye.